We've got breaking news from the White House commenting on today's sell-off and the strength of the economy. Let's get to Eamon Javers at the White House. Eamon.
Yeah, Melissa, that's right. Air Force One is wheels down in Pennsylvania, where the president will be attending a rally tonight. But while the aircraft was in the air, the White House issued this fairly lengthy statement from Sarah Sanders, the White House press spokesperson, on the state of the economy. Here's what she said. She says, the fundamentals and future of the U.S. economy remain incredibly strong. Unemployment is at a 50-year low. Taxes for families and businesses have been cut. Regulations and red tape have been slashed. Paychecks are getting fatter. Consumers and small business confidence are setting records. And farmers, ranchers, and manufacturers are empowered by better trade deals. President Trump's economic policies are the reasons for these historic successes, and they have created a solid base for continued growth. So Sarah Huckabee Sanders there predicting continued economic growth despite what we saw on in the stock market today. And I should point out, Melissa, that this is now the third statement that the White House has issued today as the market continued to slide. Two senior administration officials issuing comments to me during the course of the day before the market closed, and now this statement on the record from Sarah Huckabee Sanders after the market closed today.
Yeah, they are watching very closely. Eamon, thank you. Eamon Javers at the White House. Now, I guess the question for the markets is, if all of what Sarah Sanders has said is true, and let's say it's true, does that mean that it was 6% ago or 5.25% ago on the S&P 500? Was that pricing that statement in?
Right. That's a great question, because I agree with just about everything she said, right? It doesn't in any way take into account prices. If you read that statement, any price is the right price to pay because all of these fundamental things are there. Well, we know that's not the case, right? So I understand. Well, this is an administration that lives by the proxy of the market as their scorecard. I understand why they have to comment on it, but to me, those are two completely different things that's happening right now.
Well, it was the right price where interest rates were. So when you get back the recalibration, if interest rates still continue to rise at the same path, but now President Trump has a scapegoat in Jerome Powell because he's already said, he's on record for a while now saying he doesn't want, so he does have a scapegoat.
Well, the economy's doing well, and we're on a great growth path, then rates should be much higher than they are today. Powell should's doing the right thing. In fact, he might be behind the curve, if you believe that.
That goes back to if the economy is doing well and you see inflation in the right way, then that's fine. But if you see inflation because of man-made things,
and the market's
that's the right inflation to raise rates on.
And they have to do that calculus as well. I mean, the comment should be, we have become a victim. Today shows us we're a victim of our own success. The economy is doing so well, which is why our Federal Reserve is doing the exact right thing. Breaking news.
I want to read you some comments that Trump apparently just said. Trump says the Fed has gone crazy is too tight. I'm just simply reading the headlines. Trump says the Fed has gone crazy is too tight.
He's giving ownership if the market sells off.
He's pointing the
finger. Jerome Powell and his market, everything that Sarah said, is going to be escalated. It's a tailwind. Jerome Powell is the headwind. So now there's good cop, bad cop.
He shouldn't be doing that. I mean, the Fed, first of all, the Fed should operate independently. I hope it operates independently.
And he said that yesterday. He said he respects the independence of the Fed.
Okay, so he said that yesterday.
It's too crazy
also,
remember, the Fed.
During the campaign season, he hated Janet Yellen. She shouldn't, where are they? We're way behind the curve. We need to be raising rates, So if it works out for him, that what the Fed's doing, then they're great. And if I just think it's ridiculous.
What did the Federal Reserve do today that they went? Why did they go crazy? Because the stock market sold off? Is that why the Fed went crazy? Well, the Fed was equally crazy. Yes, they didn't seem to do. I didn't hear anything from.
But October, if you look on a chart, it's undeniable. October 2nd, October 3rd. Those are the comments.
But why shouldn't the Fed be raising rates?
Of course they should.
Because what Melissa just said. If you're seeing inflation because there's growth in the economy, or is it a transitory, man-made event that we could sit on our hands for at least one more cycle?
I want to see if we can get some more clarity on these comments. Let's get back to Eamon Javers at the White House. Eamon, what do you know about these comments?
Yeah, Melissa, I just told you that Air Force One is wheels down in Pennsylvania, and the president has apparently been speaking to reporters on the ground there, and that's where you see these comments from the president coming. Some striking language here from the president. I'm looking at a summary here. We should get tape here in a few minutes, but a summary from reporters on the ground who were asking the president about stock market today. He says, I think the Fed is making a mistake. There's a lot of safety. The Fed has gone crazy, the president says in these comments. And on stocks, he says, I really disagree with what the Fed is doing, okay? So the president expressing some frustration. This is similar to the frustration that he expressed with me when I asked him yesterday about what he thought about the Fed raising interest rates, but this language much stronger, saying the Fed has gone crazy. The president told me yesterday that he has not spoken to Jay Powell at the Fed about his concerns about rising interest rates. He hasn't. I asked him if he'd met with Jay Powell at all this year, and he just did not acknowledge that. He said, I don't interfere with the Fed. Today's language, though, much more striking from the President of the United States, saying that he thinks the Fed has gone crazy. Still no indication, though, that he's directing the Fed in any way or expressing this in any way to folks over at the Fed directly. Of course, they all have TVs as well.
Of course they do. Eamon, thank you. Eamon Javers at the White House. Does this statement back Jerome Powell and the Fed deeper into that corner where they have to raise rates no matter what the data says at this point?
Just to contradict the president, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Just to show who?
Yeah. When he says the Fed has gone crazy?
I think you have to have, for the Fed to not go at this point in time, you'd have to have a very big deterioration in the economy. It would have to be an order of magnitude to anything that we're seeing at this point. I'm not saying that the stock market is going to, I'm saying you have to see some negative growth signs here in the economy, because I agree, this does put the Fed in a bad corner, and the market still has to digest this. This is the type of language that the market is not used to hearing from a U.S. president. This is the type of language you hear from Turkey, from Argentina, from those countries.
But he has sort of warmed us up to unusual,
That's
usual
true.
comments from the president.
The president, I'm paraphrasing, he said this is the strongest economy we've ever seen in the history of the country. So the Fed is raising rates. How is the Fed going crazy given that backdrop? Isn't that sort of their mandate?
Yeah, that's a good point.
So, again, I think Steve is right. I said it the day that Joe Kernan had the interview. We talked about it on the show. He has now created a scapegoat in case the market goes lower, and that's exactly what's happening.
I agree. Everything you said, the Fed is raising rates. Remember, also from that artificially low, ridiculous level. So what the Fed should do nothing now? Even as the economy is at an all-time historic high?
But inflation does not run away, though. I mean, all of us at this table, forget any politics and forget the Fed.
You think this policy is inflation's running away?
The Phillips curve doesn't exist. Jerome Powell has said
there's hardly any wage growth.
Right,
is what you're saying.
Wage growth is what he's looking for. So all of this stuff could be just man-made, which leaves you the ability to skip a cycle.
You don't think we're going to see wage growth?
I think we'll see it. We haven't seen it for quite some time. We're getting sniffs of it, and that was what the January, February.
And so they should wait from this artificially low level.
I don't think there's any risk of them being behind the curve. I don't think there's any risk right now.
What's inflation in the BK? What's inflation in this country?
2%.
And what are you so you talk about
that's
real
right where they want to
real
have it,
interest
right?
rates are still ridiculous. So, look, I mean, I'm not an economist. Steve Leisman can come and talk about this. The Fed is doing absolutely everything right, and they should continue the course. If the market goes down on the back of it, we've gone up for 10 years.
There's still no signs of inflation.
We've gone up for 10 years. Of course there's signs of inflation. We've got 5 pre-announcements.
And if they invert the real yield curve, we'll do the same thing that Greenspan did.
Look at the last
in the face of inverted yield curve.
PPG, the list goes on and on of companies that are seeing
every name,
pressures.
there's 10 names that haven't seen it.
Let's listen to the words coming out of the president's own mouth.
No, I think the Fed is making a mistake. They're so tight. I think the Fed has gone crazy. So you could say that, well, that's a lot of safety, actually, and it is a lot of safety, and it gives you a lot of margin. But I think the Fed has gone crazy.
Okay, so it was exactly what we thought it was. The Fed has gone crazy is what the
right. Not to take it out of context.
Right. It was perfectly in context, and that's exactly what he said.
Well, if the Fed is going crazy, he should replace Jerome Powell then. I mean, if you have a crazy Fed chair. No.
Well, does that enter into the mix?
He just said it twice.
I think it does. I think you have to think about that.
No, seriously? You're thinking that he is, after he said, oh, Jerome Powell's a great man, blah, blah, blah.
That's exactly what he says about everybody before he fires them. He says they're a great person. We'll see what happens. Gets on a plane. Next thing you know, here's your pink slip.
Okay, so
I don't know. I think you have to think about it.
If he replaces Jerome Powell with a low interest rate kind of person, which is what he likes, right?
What will
the markets do?
Down.
The knee jerk will be higher.
They went down on rising rates.
Split decision. Karen, what do you say?
Down.
And then it will go lower. I agree.
It'll go
I'm
up,
not suggesting he's going.
If you call
the Federal Reserve crazy. You're effectively calling the chairperson crazy.
Yes.
And if you have a crazy person in a seat in that magnitude, you can't allow that to happen. He used the word twice. That wasn't a mistake because he said it again.
He does exaggerate. He's got a tendency to.
He's the president of the United States.
He's got a tendency to exaggerate.
Let me just make an important point. When you look at the expectations for what the Fed has been doing, people have not been surprised in any way, right?
Right.
They have
it's
not
always been well priced in.
It's always well priced in. Everybody knows it's coming. And he's crazy. And yet the market, I mean, I don't really get that the market seems to have digested and expected and think it's a reasonable, the market generally, I think, thinks it's a reasonable path.
Maybe you're crazy, too. Maybe.
All right, so be it.
Sure, he's out. No.